Hello, so I'm working on some painting on the fabric, so I thought it would be a great opportunity to, while I'm doing this, tell you some of my tricks and tips, I guess. When it comes to fabric painting, regardless of the type that you use, of what you're doing, be careful with what you wear and the environment around you. Because these are usually things that stain, basically. The idea is that you control the stain, but it is still a stain. Now, one of the main fabric painters, I guess, is the ones that you use for a whole item. So, for example, if you want to paint a shirt or a skirt or something like that. I have used two different types, one of which is the one that I call by boiling it, basically cooking it, because that's the one that you need to boil the water, then you put the fabric inside, then you put the paint, and you have to work, basically you have to stay there and cook it. That's why I call it that. Then there is the other method they sell, which is the one that you put on the washing machine. Both of them are powders and they work with heat. Now, of course, the one on the washing machine allows you to be more free. You don't have to be there. You just have to put the cycle and you're good to go. While the other one takes a little bit of time. In both cases, I would say that the both have a tendency to use a lot of water because you need a full cycle, or at least that's what the instructions say. Which also leads me to read the instructions of any project you use and be careful. Don't combine things just like that. Try to do a little bit of research and once again read the instructions of the products. Like I was saying, this type, it requires a lot of water. So I would recommend you to add as much as you can of fabric. There's usually an amount of grams of fabric and the amount that comes with the powder. And I would tell you to profit from that as much as you can because, you know, it already uses a lot of material. So at least you can get a full advantage of the product. Now, in terms of the one that you put on the washing machine, I would recommend you to, after you finish, it is said on the package that you have to do washing up. A clear washing up, okay, you run a cycle on the washing machine so it clears the washing machine. I would recommend you to do a laundry round. So for example, if I paint, I usually paint black. So if I painted some things black, after they finish, I put in the washing machine other black fabrics, other clothing. That way I'm washing the clothing that I already painted, I'm washing the things that I need to wash, and I'm also cleaning the washing machine. I would also, if you're not certain, I would then run another cycle with other things that you need to wash. This way you are cleaning it, but you're not at least fully wasting the water. Now these are cases of when you need to paint a whole thing. I would say that when it comes to the colors, it is a bit of a tricky thing. Because yes, it is written there, you have like a guideline, but the colors sometimes vary. And if you want a very particular one, I would suggest you to really check all of your options. But usually that's kind of the classic one. I think it's one of the first ones that I remember using because again, it is kind of simple. You don't need to worry about too much detail. You just have the water and the product and you're good to go. Now, when it comes to fabric paint, detail fabric paint, that's when we got into a little bit of a bigger amount of possibilities. Starting with the classic ones, which are basically these ones I have here. This is normal fabric paint. You have the small ones, the medium version and the big versions. I understand, fully understand that if you're not in an economic position to buy these products because they cost. This is paint that it is made for a particular purpose, so it usually costs a little bit more. So the question of course rises, okay, what should I do? Do I buy the small one, but maybe then on my product I need more, so I have to buy another one, but then I buy too much. So all of that, I fully understand. I would say that if you need to do some small designs and you are quite clear in it, like very, very simple things, a small one could be quite enough. For example, I got this one, which is big, because, well, I'm planning on doing a lot of it with this, and I have already worked on a lot of it. So in my case, I took the decision of paying for the whole thing, so I'm gonna use it. But I understand that there's also a aspect of really thinking through in terms of, you know, economics. These types of paints usually use heat, so after you apply them, even if you do all of the details that you want or you do whole painting, whatever you do, you need to allow them to dry, very important. I would also suggest you to allow it to dry if you even do layers. Be patient. I get that when you're creative you get excited, but honestly, trust me. And after it dries, you go with the iron. I would suggest that when you go with the iron over the fabric, you put a little bit of foiled, cooking foiled, so that you protect both the fabric and the iron. Another thing to do, hold on, when you're working with a t-shirt, for example, or something like that, you should place something behind the fabric. So let's say this is the fabric, I put it over, and this, oh gosh, this is going to absorb all the fabric that might go through. Some paint is going to be runny, so it's going to absorb and go over. So if you don't put anything there, it's going to transfer to the other part of this shirt or whatever you're using. So it might stain it and ruin it. This is something that I got ages ago. As you can see, it is fully painted and it's very nice, but if you don't have it, it's fine. Just use whatever, for example, a piece of cardboard or just something thick that you can place under it. Another bit of a trick, I would recommend you to place it and have the exact amount. In the sense that if the design is like this one, you put it over it and you keep it there. If it's big one, then try to do it as, big as you can. So when you place the fabric over it, you pin it and you keep it there. Why? Because sometimes, and even when you iron, if you get excited and you do it too fast, sometimes you could move the fabric paint either over or under it. So if you have to move it because you don't have enough, then I suggest you to lift and be careful that it is not stained, and then you place it. Point being, be careful. In fact, when I was saying that it's better to wait for it to fully dry, I mean it. It is better to genuinely wait for it and do the whole thing, and then you go on with the heat. Also because that allows you to, be careful of what you're doing, if you want to add some things or if you want to remove some things. In case of if you want to removing, for example, here I'm painting and let's say, I made a bit of a mess, then keep a piece of wet wipe with you. And what I do is that I basically put it like this on the finger and I scrubbed up a little bit. And that's basically enough, you don't need much of it. Now when it comes to the designs that you might be using, for example, in this case, I'm using a brush, but actually I used a stencil. I made this with glue, like a glue gun. I created the design on a piece of paper. I placed a piece of cooking foil. It is very useful. And over it, I put the glue gun. That way, basically just lift it up. It did not ruin my design, so I can reuse it. It did not ruin the fabric foil, so I could use it for something else. And I have my design. Then I added these pieces so I can place them, as well as kind of try for the fabric paint to really touch the fabric. The thing is that also with the brushes, when you paint on paper, it's different than when you paint on the fabric. My big suggestion in whatever type of paint you want to use is to have pieces of clothing round, similar to the one that you're going to use. I use mainly things that are made with cotton. So I have pieces of cotton woven in different types because of old t-shirts or socks or whatever it is. And then I try the paint that I'm going to work on that piece of clothing. Why? Because that allows me to see how easy it is to design over it, maybe how much I might need to actually have the color stay. It allows me to see when it dries how it looks. All of this I can do on that piece of clothing because if it gets ruined, it doesn't really matter. Also, I don't need to do a full design, I just have to do a little bit of a testing match, let's call it. So I use this stencil to kind of put the design over, but it's not that it's going to give me the full design. If anything, it's going to give me the points that then I go into connecting. And then if you want to add things, then you can. But at least with this, all of the designs are similar, have the same measurements, and they look like they are made with the same thing, which they are. But if I had to do everything by hand over and over again, it would take longer and it would take also way more time to actually make it all look the same. So a bit of a thing for, time and energy, I guess. Now, there are other types of things that you can use to paint. Besides the fabric paint, I found these. These are textile pens that I got at IKEA. These are the colors that they come from. And I have to say, this is a very nice color, actually. I would suggest those not for big designs. This is if you want to write something or if you want to do certain details. I think they look lovely. I haven't used them enough for me to tell you more. But I really like the color, even on black. The red, for example, and the blue look quite lovely. And then I also found by Pure Chance this. This is spray paint for fabrics, And I was fascinated by it because I thought, okay, interesting, a new method. It cost a little bit less, so I was kind of, okay, that looks interesting. I tried it out and I have to say, okay, I'm not mad, it's not perfect though. So with this spray paint, it's way more runny. So if you think that if with this paint it's going to run, this absolutely is going to fully even make a mess. So in this case, I would highly recommend gloves. Because it is a spray, it goes everywhere. But the other thing that I tried to do was basically open it and with a big brush kind of paint. The thing that I noticed is that when it dried, the fabric turned very, very rigid, almost as if it were straight up acrylic paint, which I wasn't too fond of. But I found out later that with a bit of a wash on a bit of fabric softener, put it over it, you move it a bit, that went great, but it did leave a little bit of residue. So important to remember that if you see that your fabric reacts in that way, when you wash it up, try to wash it with everything that has the same color so it doesn't stain other things. But once the wash with the fabric softener ended, it really went back to be a normal fabric and it looked lovely. It gave a beautiful, very bright color. So for that, I love it, because these types of paint, in particular the black one, which is the one that I use the most, it is a very shiny color. I don't know why, I'm not too fond of it. Sometimes it is not as shiny, a bit more matted, but it turns into a more of a gray black, not fully black. The spray black, this is the green one because the black one I finished, it looked lovely, dark, and it made me so happy, really. Of course, these are all methods and they all depend on what you need to do. Exactly what design do you have in mind? What do you need to do? How much detail do you need? More liquid the fabric paint is, the chances are it's going to be a little bit harder to control it, if you want the small details especially. Now, like I said before, there is also the aspect of the money, because like I said, usually these things that are made for that are not exactly cheap. And I get it. The aspect of not having the money to buy something that you want for a project, it's kind of annoying. So I also wanted to talk a bit of some extra tips that I have. For example, in this case, or the thing that I'm working on is this paint. This is not fabric paint. It's actually metal paint that I have used for other things. And the thing is that I found that it is beautiful. It gives me the gold color that I love, and it is very hard to find. Why? Because fabric paint is very limited when it comes to colors. Because it is such a particular thing and because it already costs a lot, finding interesting colors can be quite difficult. And in my case, I don't know, it probably was a stain or something like that. I saw how this painted stayed on the fabric and I was in love with it. It really gave me that gold thing that I wanted, and it stays. Because what you're doing with any other type of paint is not, exactly fabric paint. You are staining the fabric. But if you can at least control the stain and make it perhaps look with the design that you want, well, why not? In this case, this project, I want this design, and this leaves me with the result that I wanted. Another method that I found is nail polish. Especially for bright colors like this one, if you want to add detail or if you want to add perhaps some particular shades. Usually nail polish, if you do your nails, you already have it. Even if you don't, the amounts are not that big, so at least you don't feel like you need to buy a lot. And it is nail polish, which usually, if you do your nails and you have ever stained something on you, it's going to remain. So at least use it to your advantage, I would say that nail polish also sometimes behaves a little bit weird. So even with these weird methods, try it on a piece of clothing first. Sometimes if you put it on the fabric directly, even if it's colorful, it's going to kind of absorb too much. But if you do maybe a base and then you put more over it, the color is going to shine a bit more. So, even having the money to buy things, it's not just about that. I think it is also important to use the things that you already have. For example, I already had the nail polish, so I did not have to buy any of it. I got this paint for other things, so if I can use it for more things that, gives me what I want, why not? And here's where I get into the kind of middle ground, which is this. This is acrylic paint mixed with fabric softener. It's been around for a while, that kind of DIY trick for painting clothing. You can absolutely paint things with acrylic paint. But the thing is, it's usually not going to fully remain. It's going to stain, the design is going to be maybe a bit blurry. but it does sort of paint. Now if you paint the whole thing like with a lot of layers of paint, it's going to turn the fabric into a very rigid fabric, similar to what happened with this, by the way. So the idea, I guess, is that when you connect it with fabric softener, it paints but also keeps the fabric soft. The thing is though, I did some tryouts and I don't know if there's maybe an exactly amount that you should do, but overall you need to think that fabric softener, it's activated with water. So even if you have acrylic paint on it, it's probable that if you put it on water, it's going to dissolve. The reason why I say this is because this is a lovely method, but it depends on what you want to use it for. If you want to do a shirt, jeans, whatever, that you're going to wear a lot, that you're going to wash, I wouldn't recommend that. Why? Because more the fabric, well, that friction is going to make the product move and react. If you use it, then you have to wash it. If you wash it, it's going to come in contact with water, which is going to activate the fabric softener. All of that is going to leave you with, oh, it's going to disappear. And it might even stain the rest of the fabric. In my case, I use this, and as you can see, the color is very bright, very particular, because I'm going to use it in a fabric that I'm not going to wash much. And if I wash it, I can do it by hand. So I can do kind of a quick rinse and control the amount that it leaves the fabric, basically. And also, I'm not going to wear it much, so I don't have to worry about that. It's going to be for a particular thing that I'm going to wear a couple of times, and that's it. It's basically a costume. Now, all of these are things that when I began working with, DIY and all of this, I did not really think through. Sometimes I would buy the product, get excited, work on the fabric, and then I would realize, oh, I should have thought this through. I'm not too fond of the result. Other times I would try cheap methods that would also ruin the result. All of this led me to be like, okay, you know what? I think we need to sometimes be happy that creativity is there, but also kind of take a little bit of a breath and try to analyze what do we have, what can we do, and how we can use what we have the best way possible. So yeah, these were my tips and tricks. I would be very, very happy to know what your tips and tricks are. It's also important to remember that you need to also think of where you live. Some products might be a little bit harder to come by in some places, or they might cost even more. Sometimes you need to find them online, which usually then costs more. So all of that you also need to take into account. But worry not. I think it is also important to remember that you don't have to rush it. Again, you can think it through, see either this video or any other video that explains to you how could you get the result that you want, and then make a choice. And of course, if you messed it up, that's also fine, okay? There's no need to kind of push yourself down because of it. That's part of it. Like even now, I'm telling you what I know because it might come useful to you, but I also keep on making mistakes sometimes. I also sometimes get very excited when I'm creating something, so I get it. So considering I'm finishing this and I already think I told you everything I needed to, hope you have a very nice creative time. Bye bye.